case you missed it, it's the top 5 sports talkers of the day. Now, it's time for Dan Barreiro's Top 5 at 5.
Kind of a tough night last night for our two winter professional sports franchises. Which one do you want to beat up on first? Or do you want me to beat up on first?
Time now for the obligatory Kevin Fallness Minnesota Wild mention.
I think we'll start there. Your Minnesota Wild, not a good showing last night in Utah. They get Colorado, 8 p.m. puck drop on the Fan, 7:45 pregame. Here's John Hines postgame after the beatdown, really, in Utah.
Yeah, I thought we didn't get off to a great start, and then, like you said, I thought we clawed our way back in the game, but then, we didn't find a way to, I thought we had some pushes at certain points, but I just say in general, tonight's game wasn't what it needs to be for us to give ourselves a good chance to win.
Yeah, clawing yourself back in the game, I think, is a little generous. I understand from a coaching perspective, you want to back your guys, and I get that. You're not just going to savage them, but we can, and it wasn't a very good game.
No.
Outshot by a bunch. Not a good showing.
No, and, we had acknowledged their nice start to the season resuming, with the come-from-behind victory in Detroit. But since then, of course, we lost a lead at home against that same team, and then we're not particularly competitive against a good but hardly unbeatable Utah hockey club. So where are we here? I don't know. Last check, I think Russo had told us yesterday that we were 8 points clear of missing the playoffs. Is that number gone down again since we lost last night? I don't know. I guess I had assumed that there was no way we were going to miss the playoffs, but I don't know that you could say that any longer. I mean, usually when you have 8 to 12 point edge, it's just too much time to too much ground to make up this late. That's what we've told the Wild, certainly. But the concern is the one thing that can change all of that is you go into free fall, right? And I guess that's what we're left with here is this team has to make sure at this point that it doesn't go into the kind of free fall where if somebody else does get hot, they suddenly are going to find themselves battling to make the postseason.
The last wildcard team is the Canucks right now. They have 65 points. The Wild have 72. I have triple-checked the math. That is a 7-point advantage for your Wild.
How about games in hand?
The Wild have played 59. The Canucks have also played 59.
So there's no games in hand either. Nope. We can't even count on that and say, yeah, but we got a couple games in hand on them.
Nothing. Yeah.
Oh, that's getting a little bit thin for me.
Yeah.
And we got Avs tonight?
Avs tonight in Colorado, who are also a wild card team looking to catch the Wild as well.
How have they been They haven't been playing very well lately, have they?
I mean, they're okay, and they're not as good as they usually are. They're only 2 points behind the Wild, so if they win tonight, I don't know what the goal differential is off the. Oh no, they have a better goal differential. So they would hop the Wild if they beat us in regulation tonight, and we'd be a wild card team.
That's not good.
Your Timberwolves out of Utah goes the Wild. Into Utah goes the Timberwolves. Here's the injury report: questionable DiVincenzo, so that's not good.
He's going to play. I think it's pretty clear. He may be on limited minutes, but the word on the street is that he will. That it went well for him last night. He's expected to go.
Randall still out. Yeah. Gobert still out with what's listed as a low back injury maintenance. And of course, the headline: Anthony Edwards listed out for a league suspension because he got 16 technical fouls. The Fan has learned he's averaging 0.26 technical fouls per game.
That's too many.
So yeah,
definitely too many. And now, of course, the upside of it too is that from this point forward, every 2 technical fouls he gets result in another 1-game suspension. And the clock, the number restarts. You do get to start over in the postseason, but that's not the point. There's too many games left. What did we say, 22 games left for the Wolves? Didn't we say they've played 60?
Yeah.
I can do that math. That leaves 22 games on the schedule. And so, as we ranted about early in this broadcast, the reason I think Wolves fans should be a little terrified right now is Anthony has fully convinced himself he's a martyr, that he's a victim. And until people around him get that out of his head, we're in trouble. That's going to be a real problem because it seems more likely that he's going to continue to play the poor, pitiful me role. I don't get the calls, become so consumed by it. And even if you agree with his position, the only people who get hurt as he continues to line up technical fouls and misses more games, including a very winnable game tonight against Utah he's not going to be available for, is the team itself. And that's why they have to cut through to him and explain that. If maybe the only way they feel like they can do that is say, Anthony, you're right. You're getting screwed. But we got to find a way to channel that elsewhere because we can't cut our noses to spite our face. And that's what's happening here. I happen to believe there's way too much victimization nonsense going on anyway, that it's nowhere near as bad as Wolves fans and Anthony Edwards want to believe. And that part of this is him coming to grips with the role he has and that he's not the first star player to feel like he does not get a fair share of the calls. And by the way, in terms of attracting fouls, he's second in the league attracting fouls among players who go to the basket a high amount of times. So the premise is flawed to start with, regardless of whether within a given game some calls should have been made or should not have been made against him. But he's in dangerous ground right now. He's 5 years into his career. Yeah, he's still young, but he's been around long enough that they're going to have to get this out of his head. Cat did. Cat figured out a way to not be quite so consumed by it with great success a year ago. To me, if you're the Wolves, that's who you point to and say, Cat got past it, and there's no reason why you shouldn't either. But as long as you do, like even tonight, I mean, you have put yourself, if the Wolves lose tonight, it will be 100% on Anthony Edwards. That will be a loss that should be chalked up to him completely and explicitly.
The other thing I wanted to mention is the NFL, something to come out of the combine, is league executive Troy Vincent talked about potentially changing the overtime rules yet again.
So what's the new change? Do you understand it?
So the way I understand it is they're looking to, and grain of salt here because this is just the way I understand it, in the playoffs, there's a different set of overtime rules than the regular season. In the regular season, if you score a touchdown first, it's over.
It's right, done. Right.
In the playoffs, it's both teams get a possession no matter what.
Right.
That's, I think, what they're trying to switch to. Also, they're thinking about having a virtual measuring system for first downs.
I saw that.
Which I think is amazing. You think probably... Well, I'll leave it at that.
No, I'm fine with it if any of us can understand it. And I'll say again, at the end of the day, people are still going to say we got screwed. It's not going to matter because they're not even going to understand. Well, that doesn't sound right. It sure doesn't look. I look at the cameras. I put the cameras together, and that virtual measuring didn't seem like it added up to me.
But then you say, well, the line's not official.
No, that's
always
the
comeback.
Yeah, that is.
Can I do one more kind of out of left field here?
You have time. Yeah.
So this came up earlier this week, and I really wanted to get your opinion on it. So, are you familiar with Iowa State Athletic Director Jamie Pollard? He's been there for a long time.
Vaguely familiar. I don't know him well. 2.5
hours down south. He had comments on basically selling alcohol at Iowa State events.
Okay.
And he's very against it. Here's a quote. My second reason is behavioral issues. When I get to see what our police department deals with, people are slobs. People are flat out slobs, and that's without selling alcohol. And I'm not convinced people buy our seats in the stadium actually want it. Now, they don't want the drunk slob behind them spilling beer on them.
Or throwing up on them.
Yes, that's a direct quote from Jamie Pollard. And then I just got the notification today that he's got a 5-year extension. People are pissed down there because they're like, you just called our whole fan base drunkard slobs, basically. He did, but he didn't. And I just feel like if Coyle did that up here, there would be probably hell to pay.
There probably would be.
You know what I mean? So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I have to read all the quotes in context to see if he was trying to be a little bit more nuanced, because sadly the headline's going to be he calls all the fans slobs. It's a truism that alcohol changes everything. I mean, I'm not going on any kind of a limb there. I don't want to be a hypocrite, though. I mean, because, booze sells a lot on sports talk station, the whole bit. I mean, it's all kind of connected. But and I know, I think most people can agree that if you want to clean up what happens in ballparks overnight, you remove booze. It would change it. I would say 90% of the altercations would be eliminated. And some places are obviously worse than others. In Lambeau, I'm assuming it'd be a revolt of some sort if that effort, if Gerby he would be part of that revolt. But I don't think he's wrong. I guess what I don't know is, do they serve it now and he's trying to get it out, or is it he's under pressure to include alcohol sales and is trying to resist those forces.
It's the latter. Now, there are some, if you're like a booster in a suite, you can have alcohol, but they don't serve it to the masses. So the uppity ups get alcohol, but no one else.
See, that's rough.
Yeah.
That's not unprecedented, I might add.
Yeah.
But that's where you end up losing people. Say, oh, wait a minute. So you make it an elitist thing. The beautiful people.
Yeah, we're slobs.
Yeah. We trust the beautiful people to not throw up on one another, but we don't trust the average slob, as you say, to have that same measure of discipline.
Here's a direct quote on with this. If you can't refrain from drinking for 3.5 hours from the game, then don't come to the game. I don't care.
Whoa.
That's a quote.
Well, the danger of that is the obvious, is be careful what you wish for there. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe they've got such demand for tickets that, is he talking about football mainly or basketball or both? Both. Okay. Yeah. Do they have any problems selling seats? At Ohio State, I would assume not.
Well, basketball, they're probably going to be a 2 or 3 seed. So
that's right.
They love that. Football, they'll get people there. Yeah. They're all right.
Interesting. Yeah, I had not seen that. That's a good one. That has good ramifications. All right, let's do this. Let's get a pause in. Lavelle has surprised us. He is with us in studio. If you have questions for him, hit the Bradshaw and Bryant KFAN text line. That number is 64686. We got one other breaking item regarding an update on the the Hackman investigation as well. We'll get to that and include Lavelle next.
Lakefront Music Fest is back and bigger than ever. Don't miss out on Rock Night, Friday, July 11th, headlined by Foreigner, with support from 38 Special and Loverboy. Tickets are still available, but are going fast. Full details and to get your tickets, go to KFAN.com, keyword calendar.
There is another development in the Gene Hackman mystery. According to CNN, data from actor Gene Hackman's pacemaker shows he was likely dead for 9 days before he and his wife were found dead at their New Mexico home. Authorities are now saying the pacemaker shows Hackman's last event recorded on Feb 17. Santa Fe County Sheriff Aiden Mendoza said at a news conference earlier today. According to the pathologist, I think that is a very good assumption that was his last day of life. We've talked earlier about the fact that Hackman and his wife, along with one of their dogs, was found dead this week in circumstances officials have deemed suspicious enough to warrant a thorough investigation. 2 green cellular devices were removed from the home along with 3 medicines, a thyroid medication used to treat high blood pressure or chest pain, and Tylenol, according to the inventory released today as part of a search warrant affidavit in Santa Fe County Court. Also seized by sheriff's deputies were records from MyQuest, a medical diagnostics service, and a 2025 monthly planner. For now, the causes of death are not known. The pair did not show any external trauma, no immediate signs of foul play, according to preliminary autopsies and officials. Also, no immediate signs of carbon monoxide being an issue or a natural gas leak being an issue as well. Both Hackman and his wife tested negative for carbon monoxide, according to the officials speaking in this presser that took place, I don't think really that long ago. Couples' bodies found in separate rooms in their secluded house with scattered pills found next to Hackman's wife, Arakawa, according to the sheriff's office. So, and investigators have not yet determined whether Hackman and Arakawa died at the same time. So there may be, we may get answers soon, but we don't have all of them yet. All of it, Lavelle, is just obviously quite tragic and quite sad. And at this point, seems to be a lot of unanswered questions.
I don't know if they're ever get to the bottom of it. It just seems weird. I mean, the one dog passed away, but it was in a kennel apparently. But the other 2 dogs weren't, and so they were actually on the premises when authorities came to check on their well-being. What does that mean? And it's unfortunate. It's just such a legendary actor, and having his fans, and I'm a fan of his. Have to go all through this, and now we're all checking for daily updates to see if there's going to be any other information coming out. I just know how much word they can be until autopsies are done.
That's it.
You know, and things like that. So hopefully we'll get answers, but, you know, there's still a grieving process that needs to take place, too.
Part-time guy Brett Blakemore, can you hit the Minnesota sports calendar of calamity bat signal sounder?
What?
We have...
It's the Minnesota sports calendar of calamity.
Today's list was so extensive that Dan Minnesota didn't tweet it out. He emailed me.
Good Lord.
So I'll give you the list here. This is for breadth. It's pretty impressive. They're very different stories, but there's a lot here for a single day. And what is the date? This is the last day of February, correct? Feb 28. Goes all the way back. The first entry in the sports calendar of calamity for this date, 1948.
I know this is baseball.
Gophers and Hawkeyes have a huge brawl that ultimately includes the crowd. Now, would that have been at Williams Arena? Was that a home brawl or a visiting brawl? If Dan Minnesota is listening, let me know. In 1976, on this date, the Fighting Saints folded at MSP Airport.
That's his love, the Fighting Saints.
It is.
Yeah.
1978, this is a sneaky, underrated one. Buddy Ryan leaves the Vikings for the Bears after being told he wouldn't get promoted to defensive coordinator. And
who was?
As you recall, it's a good question. I don't know who got the job, but it wasn't Buddy. And, of course, Buddy went on to have enormous success. In fact, basically, the defensive players, Bears players, went to bat for Buddy so much that that's largely how he stayed on as Ditka was hired, was they were saying, don't mess with this guy. He's the answer. And, of course, he was the architect of the 1985 Chicago Bears, the greatest defense of all time. This is an underrated one. 2011 on this date. You know what happened in Twins history?
What year?
2011. So 14 years ago.
That's past.
This might have even been, this was your scoop. I don't know.
Yeah, it was on my watch. I don't know. February 28th? Derek Falvey wasn't around, so it wasn't. Okay, what was it? The
Twins confirmed or announced that the Target Field spruce trees had been cut down. Was that your story? Was that your scoop, or did you get scooped on that?
Well, I mean, we were right. I mean, we were covered. I can't remember who scooped who on that one. I think I was back in the day and age where scoops still mattered.
I was devastated by that. I was devastated by that. Those trees were aesthetically pleasing. Team's never been the same.
It was a hilarious moment in Twins history, the back and forth, and Justin Morneau talking about the waving trees could be distracting the hitters.
Yeah, that's always there's the target. It was allegedly a background issue, correct?
Yeah.
But they were cool looking out there. To this day I miss the spruce trees.
Yeah, that's actually I touched on that in my book, The Franchise History of Minnesota Twins, still available on Barnes & Noble and Amazon, by the way. Because I called Michael Kadire and talked to him about that. Because at the time there was a belief that Kadire was also against the trees being there, but he.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. He passionately said that wasn't the case, and then he actually told me later that he bought my book just to make sure what I said about him and on subject.
2021, the Minnesota Timberwolves became officially the worst sports franchise in North America in terms of win percentage. Now that has changed since, but this was the date there. And last year, I forgot this one. On this date, a year ago, both Gopher men's and women's basketball teams yielded 100 points apiece.
Good Lord.
On the same night. Also, the men's team became the first team in 25 years, whether you're talking about NBA, WNBA, and or Division I men or women, to lose a game while scoring 95-plus points, shooting 70% or better from three, and having 5 or fewer turnovers. And we still lost that game. Will you look up who we played on that occasion, Brett Blakemore? So Feb 28, 2024, Golden Gopher men's basketball. That's impressive.
I got two things.
Yeah.
One, whenever I've heard about Gopher basketball and brawls, all I keep hearing was the massive brawl against Ohio State.
Ohio State one's the worst.
I didn't know that these were like the brawling Gophers of yesteryear, that they used to get into it with different schools.
Apparently so.
Yeah.
Lavelle would really like the answer to this question, who the Gophers played that day.
The Illini?
The Illini in Champaign. Final score 105-97.
What was the year?
Last year. Year ago on this date, yeah.
That was Terrence Shannon Jr.
Yeah.
He's looked good lately. He's going to have, it could be a big night for him again tonight, because with Ant out, I have to believe that Shannon is going to see some significant playing time.
This has become a roster I don't want to say in flux or in transition, but with the rise of Clark and TJ, which I still don't know why they call him TJ. It's for Terrence Jr., I guess. You got some guys stepping up that are proving themselves to be more than guys who could hold down the bench while the starters go out in the court here. So
the key for me, the most encouraging aspect of it in Shannon's case, is going downhill.
Well, here's the thing. You can run the tape and go back to the day of the draft or the days after the draft. I was on this station saying the one thing he does well is that he gets out on the wing and he's going to drive to the basket and finish.
He's fearless.
That was the one thing he could bring to this team, and he's bringing it.
He is absolutely bringing it. He was part of the reason they got back in the game again yesterday against last night against the Lakers.
And in the
Oklahoma City game.
Comeback. I have the Vikings 1978 coaching staff up.
Oh, okay. So who was the coordinator? Who did Buddy lose out to?
Head coach Bud Grant.
Right.
Offensive coordinator, your boy, your guy, Jerry Burns.
Burnsy, yeah.
Defensive coordinator, someone called Bob Holloway.
Oh, I remember Holloway. Actually.
Holloway, yeah.
Yeah, Bob Holloway. I do remember him. I think he was considered an accomplished coach, but Buddy obviously became a huge name when it comes to great defense. The 46 defense, right?
Right, and it got him the head coaching job with the Eagles.
It did, and he ended up, I think he kept losing in the first round, so they didn't go anywhere. But tremendous defensive coach, obviously. Let's do this. Let's make this the bottom of the hour pause. Lavelle, kind enough to join us in studio. I do want to get to the Anthony Edwards developments today with him.
Good grief.
We'll talk some Twins because, indeed, Lavelle is headed to spring training into next week. We'll talk about that. We'll cover kind of the sports waterfront across the board. If you have questions for Lavelle, 64686 is the Bradshaw and Bryant KFAN text line. But let's come back and talk Anthony Edwards' ongoing, I guess,
maturation,
assault on martyrdom, a belief that he's a victim.
Oh, my God.
Which is not serving him or this team very well. Stay tuned. Clayton from Rochester writes, Dan, does Lavelle know if the wind played a factor in the Twins game today? Reminds me of when his guy Vance, the Vanimal Worley, got shelled in a spring training game and blamed it on the wind. A 0 on the Pelf scale. Did we give up like 18 runs today? I didn't even pay attention. I don't pay attention to much to spring training.
It was 13-10 was the final score. Ooh. It was 10-10 going in the ninth, and I believe Baltimore scored 3 times. The Twins scored 10 runs, but I think there was just one homer. Buck was 3 for 3. He had a double and four. He was on base 3 times. Kiersey scored 3 runs, and it ended up being one of those guys with like an 18-letter last name that came in the late innings and got pounded. You know, someone we're not going to see in the majors this year. So
you're going down? Did you say Wednesday?
I'm going down Wednesday.
You're going down Wednesday for a week.
Yep.
Let me ask you before we get to some stuff on the team. Let me ask you about the ownership issue and what you've heard, because obviously people were excited about the Ishbia name just because it was a name, and is a name that's got deep, deep, deep pockets, right? Mm-hmm. An owner clearly capable, as he and his brother have proven with Phoenix, of recklessly spending. And I'm sure for Twins fans, they go, I'd like a little of that, even if it is reckless. Yes. You know, it's just a nice change of pace. So he apparently now is out of the mix if he's pursuing more likely the White Sox. I've been told by other people, like, well, don't panic. There's other people out there. But I think because none of them have been named, for your average Twins fan hoping for a transition here and a fast transition,
still a mystery.
They're daunted a little bit. So is there a mystery? Is there names you can reveal today? Or do you think now this is going to be slowed down considerably if indeed the Ishbias are out of the mix?
I wish I could give names. I mean, the people you end up talking to on the periphery of this. There's people who know people who maybe talk to some people who are interested, but they're all saying they're not going to have trouble selling this team. So they're saying that someone's going to emerge out of this group. Although part of me thinks too that all of a sudden after the Cishbury thing came out, there was some rhetoric thrown out there. A couple stories I read about, the Twins may pull the team off the market, and that sounded like posturing, using the press to posture a little bit, seeing if they could extract another couple $100,000 in the final sell price. So we're not going to be real. No, I'm sure they have to sign a confidentiality agreement. So it's going to be hard for us to name names. But I'm telling you, if I hear a lead, I've been trying to look into it, and Phil Miller and Bobby Nightingale have too. So we've been talking to people, and they all keep saying there's multiple teams interested.
But it ain't going to be by opening day, obviously.
Well, the time frame was that they hope to identify a winning bidder by opening day and have all the I's dotted and T's crossed by mid-season in terms of being final vetting, making sure the money's real, meeting with the ownership committee, kissing their rings, and getting approval. It was going to take till mid-season. I don't know if that's the case anymore. That's something I'll be looking into when I get down there a little bit and start talking to some people. So I would not fret. I know it's tough because they want tangible proof that this thing is going to be real. It's just not there at this point.
Yeah, in terms of that time frame, I'll believe it when I see it. I'm not saying it can't happen, but I don't know. I'm less optimistic, but maybe they're just playing it close to the vest. I don't know. I don't think there's any reason to believe Taylor's going to be in the mix. I don't believe he has any interest in.
When's he going to announce that he's not going to appeal? Well, that's got to be coming up.
To a certain extent, the fact that he hasn't said anything to me might be that statement in a way, because by now unless he's loading up or he's got, his own investigators trying to find some vulnerability. But the ruling, as I understand it, the only way you can really question this ruling, because it's supposed to be binding, is if you think there's a conflict of interest that you can establish involving one of the arbitrators, which I think that's pretty difficult. So
here's the thing too about if Glenn would have won this arbitration ruling, the next step would have been, okay, what's the succession plan? Because Glenn's a spring chicken, and we got to figure out what the long-term ownership future is for this franchise. If he decides to turn his attention to the Twins, then the succession plan would still have to be a factor, I think, in him pulling off the transaction. Because he was trying to scale down before this era, the A-Rod Laurie era started, and wanted to keep the team all of a sudden. So. I'd like to hear something out of Glenn's camp on this sooner than later. Yeah,
well, it would just be good to kind of clear the air. That at some point you're going, okay, God bless you. I thought we should have won, but we lost, and so now we go on to the next phase, which is obviously the Board of Governors takes a look at the offer from A-Rod and Laurie, and we kind of go from there.
And I will say, too, the story I read, A-Rod did indeed was sitting in Glenn's chair during
pregame, right?
Pregame,
yeah,
and it went over to this season ticket spot. Once the game began.
Even if that's true, that's a little bit of, I think, of, shall we say, dancing on the grave, so to speak.
A little bit.
Now, it's not quite the same as sitting them in those seats when the game begins, but that's in of itself kind of interesting. But there's no mystery. There's these folks hate each other now. I mean, they made it very clear.
And they want to buy Glenn out totally now. The initial plan was for Glenn to retain about 20% or something like that, I think
that's right, yeah.
Yeah, and now that's not going to be the case, apparently.
Who is the guy or gal who can get through to Anthony Edwards?
It may take a group of people. It may take a village to get Anthony Edwards to... he's, 23? The man is still a young buck.
5 years in, though.
He's still synthesizing life. He's got to know, one, you can't swear when the microphone is running. Just stop that, first of all. When he's paid, he had 6 figures worth of fines this year already?
Yes.
For infractions.
$285,000 for 5 different infractions so far.
The technical foul thing, I had to go look this up, he's headed into the Draymond Green scale of technical fouls, because Draymond was a habitual 20-something technical guy. every year. He's not at the Rasheed Wallace level.
No, but he's headed that way.
Well, Rasheed, he got teed up 41 times one year, which I find absolutely remarkable.
That is stunning when you look back on it. That's true.
And then I also looked up, Chuck Person kicking the ball in the stands during the game. But Kobe had 18 technicals one year. So if Ant was having a playing career like Kobe, I think we'd all take that. But it's weird because if Ant was playing for Denver or Atlanta or Chicago or Orlando, and he's doing this, we all be looking and going, man, that guy's out of control. That guy's a loudmouth. Oh, he needs a governor on himself, you know. But once he's your guy, you're like, well, he is the leader of the team. It's okay. You just got to scale things down. But he's got to take it upon himself here to understand he needs to be on the court for his team. And if he's getting teed up and getting ejected from games, he's hurting his team.
Even if you want to buy the notion that he doesn't get a fair share of the calls, which I don't agree with.
I think it's changed. I think first couple of years,
it has changed.
Yes.
And in fact, statistically, it's provable that it has changed. But the fact of the matter is, even if you believe you're getting screwed by the officials, you have to channel it better, because in the end, you are hurting the fact that you're not available tonight in a night where you still have some starters out, right? Two starters are still out. Mm-hmm. This is a game where you're supposed to get it now. These are games where you have to win these games to give yourself a chance to get out of the play-in. And there's no excuse for it. And I think they've enabled it a little bit. Even the head coach lately, he's been kind of on a rampage about it, which I think sends the wrong message to Edwards as well.
And plus, I think earlier in your show, you mentioned someone said, well, maybe the refs are being a little more sensitive. Do you know how much crap these referees take during games?
It's endless.
Not just basketball, NFL. Yeah. The swearing that goes on. The times I filled in for Steve Ashburn, I'm sitting at courtside when we used to be able to sit courtside. You could hear stuff that's going on the court. I remember Kevin Garnett telling the officials, I don't want to ever hear you make that call again. Just stuff like that. He just ticking off, just lighting fuses all the time. That stuff goes on constantly. Plus, players are swearing at each other, and you're trying to figure out, is it just trash talk or is this going to escalate? And now you're trying to call block charges at the same time. It's not easy. Well,
and in all honesty, apparently early in the game, one of the officials basically warned both teams and said, I'm hearing too much stuff tonight, back off. Well, that's another sign of maturity is, well, on this night, I got to back off a little bit. I may not like it, but the message has been conveyed. And part of what the best players do is they find other ways to channel. If it's rage, they just find other ways to channel it.
I'll go dunk on somebody because Ant now he is that guy. He's that guy.
That's it.
Whenever the Wolves come to town and referee look up, we got the Timberwolves, Anthony Edwards, 16 technicals, likes to run his mouth and swear at us. I'll be ready.
And now he every two technicals he misses another game. And there's 22 games left this season, Lavelle. Regular season. That's a fourth of the schedule, right? So now it starts over in the playoffs. That's the good news. But look, Cat conquered it. He largely conquered this problem last year. You could say sometimes still he'd roll the eyes, but his technical foul total was way down. In fact, somebody said it was 0. I don't remember that, but it was way down. And he got a lot better at it than he has been previously, which should be proof that it can be done.
His last year, definitely. But before that, Cat was a guy who would complain to officials while his man is running down the court.
Well, that's happened with Ant this year.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing. You can't give up baskets. Story broke while the Wolves were still in L.A. I think it was Sam Amick wrote it for The Athletic, confirming, I think, a report that others had at least hinted at, a belief that the Dallas Mavericks didn't just call the Lakers about Luka. They called one other team. And that the other team they called, according to this report, was the Minnesota Timberwolves. And they said, look, Tim Conley, how do you feel about Luka Doncic? And Conley apparently said, well, what do you mean? He said, well, would you like to have him? And Conley said, for what? And they said Anthony Edwards.
Well, that's a non-starter.
And the story is that Conley said no. Here's my question. Would you have said no to that deal?
I think I would have. Because I think the Wolves have something special in the young man. I think he could be I think he could be one of the top 5 players in the league. And that's a team that you always want that type of player in your squad. And the key is building around him. You're resetting the foundation and your attitude and the way you're playing when you add someone like Luka. But Luka did get to the finals. Ant didn't, He's a fantastic player. But you can see him on the court, always looking a little soft. Body's always looking a little soft. And there's still that viral video from last year during the postseason, because I'm sitting there and he's after a game at Target Center and he's holding a beer talking to his dad. And all of a sudden I see a guy say, hey, that looks like Michael Finley. Because Michael Finley was a Chicago high school star.
That's right.
I think he's assistant GM. And Michael snatches the beer out of Luka's hand.
out of his hand, yeah.
So
it's a good viral video. When
I woke up and I found out that trade was made, I said to myself, Dallas is sick of Luka's crap. That was my initial reaction. And I'm pretty sure that's the impetus for the move.
Well, I will say, there may be a backstory that ultimately is revealed of something more significant.
Well, here's a question, Dan.
I can't move on him. I can't trade him at the age, because I would even at 25 say, all right, for the same reason you say you gotta continue to be patient with Anthony to figure this officiating stuff out, for example, or learning to move better without the ball better. By that same logic, you say, I can't. He's too good. I mean, Luka is a top 5 skilled level offensive player, an all-time player in that regard, and it's too young an age to say we're going to roll the dice. I said when the story first broke, Guardsy and I talked about it, I think I probably would have made the deal, but I acknowledge there's risk on the Luka side too. There's a different kind of risk. With Anthony, the risk isn't taking care of his body. I think he's taking care of his body pretty damn well.
Right.
It's other kinds of risks that I think you're messing with. And in Luka's case, it's that. It's okay. Is he going to turn old overnight? That at some point. But he's awfully good.
That jumper's still true, though.
His vision is ridiculous. I mean, LeBron is reborn because now LeBron has figured out, look, I'm fine just moving without the ball because he's going to find me. And already his assist totals have been ridiculous.
And they've been playing okay without AD.
Correct.
Here's my question. What if it was a year earlier and Cat was still with the Wolves and you could put Cat in the trade for Luka?
Somebody texted that same question.
Now, they would have second apron problems.
Yes. Well, yeah, that's true. That's an intriguing question because then you've got 2 great wing players. Can they play together? Which they probably could because Luka is such a good passer. My guess is Dallas wouldn't have been I don't know. Maybe they would have been interested in that. I don't know. I mean, obviously, Cat's had a great offensive season. Defensively, they're not a very good team. Bradshaw and Brian KFAN text line is open at 64686. Let me get to a couple of texts, and we can then get. I want to get into a couple of others. So, by the way, real quick, Dan Minnesota's back to give us more details on that Gophers Iowa basketball riot in 1948. It was in Iowa City. And a Gopher named Chet Tomzik was blindsided by an Iowa spectator suffering a broken nose. And Dan reminds me, and he's right, the last time we had Bud Grant on in studio, Bud, he was a part of that team. We asked him about that particular altercation. It's the kind of stuff, Lavelle, if you put that kind of altercation involving fans or the Luke Whitty brawl at Williams Arena in the early 70s, if you put that in a modern media context, those stories would have broken the internet, especially the Ohio State brawl. Because that was ugly. Yeah. And the only reason a bigger deal wasn't made of it was we didn't have endless video. We had some, but we didn't have endless video. We didn't have endless coverage of what today would have been an incredibly large story.
And plus, of course, that's why stuff like that doesn't happen today, because they know everybody's going to see it immediately.
True.
And it's going to be viral all over the world. So I doubt you ever see another, what's his name?
Who are you thinking of?
The player who got the water bottle, the melee in Indianapolis. What was his name? He got hit with a water bottle, went up in the stands.
Oh, Malice in the Palace?
Malice in the Palace, yes.
Yeah, that was in Detroit, right? I think it was in Detroit.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, that was Detroit.
Okay, Detroit.
Yeah, Ron Artest.
Well, it was Artest.
Yeah, that was bad. That was very bad, yeah.
I don't think you ever see something like that again.
No, I think you're probably right. And again, you put that story in today's media context, too. Same thing, the internet gets broken.
NBA teams have beefed up their security groups to the point where I don't think they'll let players get into the stands to do stuff like that.
Yeah, there's a lot of that too. Yeah, 100%.
Because the guy who runs the Wolf Security is like a former Minneapolis police officer who I know.
Really?
Tony Adams.
Oh, okay, that's right. Yeah. There you go. Super Show has been great. Please thank Lavelle for skipping his Friday cigar bar happy hour.
How you know I didn't have a cigar before I came here?
Studio. How do we know you're not? How do they know you're not having one right now?
Yeah, that's true.
I grew up around.
This place is enclosed.
Lavelle, when you grow up at a place called the Spanish Society, the Spanish Castle is what we used to call it, on a Friday night, there's nothing but cigar smoke, man. All the old Spaniards back in the day, we're talking about late 50s, early 60s. Are you kidding me? It was nothing but. Every parlor was a cigar parlor at the Spanish Castle. It didn't even matter whether you were interested. You were smoking a cigar whether you were smoking a cigar or not. That's the way it worked.
I love it.
And you just had to deal with it. There wasn't any complaining. There wasn't anybody saying, well, come on, that's not really fair to the kids.
I love it.
That's what we grew up on.
Yeah, and today I actually went down to the office to write my Sunday column, and was delighted to see there was no one in the department. So I had the whole department to myself, so it was great.
That's kind of good.
Yeah, I was transcribing, and I could have the volume up on the recorder and didn't have to worry about making noise. Got done, and I was like, you know what? I think I'll go and sit in with Dan today. You know what? I think I'll go have a cigar before I go sit in with Dan. So that's been my day.
It worked out well. It's good to have you here. Are you standing by your position that the Gophers need to stay the course with Ben Johnson?
Yes, I was waiting. I thought that was going to be your first question of this segment, and I'm going to stand by what I wrote. I still think that Ben has done more than what was anticipated for the squad. Once again, people picked this team to finish last in the conference, and I think they've played better than that. My head scratching losses to Penn State and Northwestern. That's what baffles me. It baffles me. But now they're at Michigan State now, right? I think they're at Michigan State.
They're playing at Nebraska, I think, tomorrow.
Oh, Nebraska's a massive game because now they're grouped in all these teams that have an outside shot of getting in the top 14. Nebraska's one of them. They finished with Rutgers. Rutgers has got two tough games before they play the Gophers in the finale. And I'm missing a third team.
We're hosting Wisconsin in between. We're at Rutgers at our last regular season game, and at Nebraska Saturday, I think.
Yep. So those teams are all grouped in that same area here. So we'll see. They've made it a lot harder for themselves, but they're still in a better spot than a lot of us anticipated. And that's with two bad losses. Overtime loss to Ohio State was bad. They lost another, and they had like 3 or 4 bad losses now that I think about it. But they also had a couple of quad 2 wins. It's just weird.
Well, the problem, what's going to, if he ends up not staying, losing his job, it will be losing to bottom feeders at home. Because the 3 of the teams beneath them in the standings or tied with them in the standings at the bottom end are Washington. They lost to Washington here. They lost to Penn State here. And who's the third? Washington, Penn State, and there was check the bottom of the Big Ten men's basketball stand. Northwestern.
Yeah, Northwestern.
Yeah, now Northwestern was the most recent.
Yep.
That's what's going to kill them is because you can't look at those games and say, well, you're overmatched, at all. And those games were all at home. I mean, the funny thing is, there was a story in your paper that just cracked me up, which was, in effect, well, the Gophers' challenge is they don't like having to play when they're favored. And it's like, come on, man. You haven't been good enough long enough for the short period of time they had a nice little stretch to get back into that. So the notion that we can only win when we're underdogs, come on. That's kind of silly at this point. And that doesn't explain away losing to bottom feeder teams at home, which they did in all 3 of those cases.
It's just scratching, man, because, both the Mitchells have played well at late, and Lukai Patterson has shown his toughness, and they've been able to get enough scoring aside from Garcia. But I'm not ready to light the fire under Ben's rear end at this point. Now I want to see how the next recruiting class comes in, see how he handles the transfer portal, and if they have a rough year next year, then I'm like, well, you're not going to. I guess you could argue that he's going to go into the next season a little bit on the hot seat because he's got to get this team to 20 wins and at least get to the Big Ten tournament. 14 teams, you should be able to get to the Big Ten tournament.
Clayton from Rochester, Dan, should Finchy reach out to Tom Crean to see if he can connect with Ant? Maybe Johnny K can ask him if it's in the works. We are actually, Guardsy had mentioned to me that we're going to try to get Tom Crean back on the show.
Really?
For the first time in a while next week. And, of course, Crean coached Edwards at Georgia. He has very high regard for him, but he's also been, I think, honest usually about where Ant has to get a little bit better. I honestly think, and this is a defensive Anthony Edwards, that part of what has to change is, I think, especially with obviously Randall out and DiVincenzo out until last night, is he's got too much responsibility at the end of games. I really, and because Conley has been more injured lately and in and out of the lineup, I think part of this is you're asking him to do almost everything offensively to score and to run it in effect. The ball's constantly in his hands. And to me, what you need to do with him is take some of that away, take a little bit of that heat off of him and give the ball to somebody else every once in a while, because it's a hell of a lot to expect. You know, like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is older to start with, but beyond that, he's more of a natural point guard. He's a point guard / scorer. Anthony Edwards is not a point guard. He's just not. And that's not a rip.
No.
But you're asking him, in effect, to do all the things that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander does, and I'm not even sure that is completely fair. He's also got to get, as we talked about, smarter, playing off the ball.
Yes.
Finding all of his shots, I feel like, are hard. And what the best scorers do is they figure out ways to score, a little more easily. That's what LeBron's doing right now, playing off of Luka. He's just cutting, going back door, and they're different styles of players, obviously. LeBron's, twice as old too.
He's going to get baskets just in the run of play, just by being on the court with Luka.
Exactly. That's exactly it.
So that's what Anthony's. Dante's back a little bit, so that would help. I see DiVincenzo had 6 assists yesterday.
He played well last night, and he's listed as questionable, but is expected to play again tonight.
What have you had conversations with Mike Conley on his weekly visit?
We had earlier in the week.
About Ant and his...
Yes, well, not so much, because this stuff came up again after our last conversation, but he did agree that he thinks they need to take some of the heat off of him a little bit. Now, Conley himself, I think, is just trying to, he's not the same guy he was a year ago. He's been more injured this year. He's getting longer in the tooth. He's closer to the end than to the beginning. And, in a perfect world, you're leaning on Dillingham a little bit more, but the head coach is hot and cold on him. And when he turns on Dillingham, he turns on.
Nas was 1 of 10 yesterday.
Yes, that was their biggest issue yesterday. He had a bad scoring game.
TJ's going to have to be on the court late games.
Well, yeah, there's no reason he shouldn't at this point. I mean, it's basically he's as you say, he's getting to the basket. He's either getting to the free throw line or he's scoring down low. I don't know who's out for Utah if they have their whole team. The last spread I saw is we're still favored by 2.5 or 3. Utah is not very good.
It's Wolves minus 4.5 now.
Well, now it's 4.5. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, maybe something changed.
And by the way, Jaden McDaniels is slowly changing my mind about him because he's finding offense now, which needed to happen.
It did need to happen.
That evolution has started during the second half of the year. And I like when he's aggressive going to the basket. He needs to keep doing that. And if he finds a lane, take it, man. Because Ant's going to need, because I don't know if they have a second scorer right now. These good teams just have 3 guys. I don't know if they have a number 2.
No, that's true. That's part of the problem.
Yeah,
right.
That's going to be a struggle for their squad. And at the beginning of the year, you already have 2 defensive first guys in Gobert and McDaniel at the beginning of the year. Mm-hmm. So you've got to have offense from the other positions. And when Conley was starting at the beginning of the year, now those 3 guys weren't scoring.
That's true. That's the way the league is set up now. That's a really tough.
Offensive diversity is going to have to be a focus here going into the offseason when it comes to team building.
All right, let's squeeze in one more, get a break in, one more segment with Lavelle E. Neal III, kind enough to surprise us in studio today. We'll get to a couple of other topics when we return.
We've got your shot to win tickets to Summer of Loud 2025, Friday, July 11th at Somerset Amphitheater. See performances from Beartooth, I Prevail, Parkway Drive, and more. They rock. Head over to KFAN.com, keyword contest for more info.
Lavelle is with us for one more segment. What was I going to ask you? I had something else up my sleeve. We covered the Gophers. We've covered the Wolves. We haven't really covered... Well, what'd you write about for Sunday, by the way? It's hockey-related, you say, huh?
Yeah. 45 years ago, last Saturday, was the anniversary of the Miracle on Ice victory over the Soviet Union in the gold medal round, which, of course, propelled the 1980 U.S. men's hockey team to greatness after they beat Finland. And so I felt bad because I thought we should have kind of addressed that a little bit more in the paper, but I found another angle. So two things that happened here with those guys. Pete Stauber, who's a state rep in Congress, introduced a bill to award a team a Congressional Gold Medal, which is the highest civilian honor that Congress gives out to the team. So doing research for the column, I discovered that right after the Miracle on Ice, there was an Illinois congressman who tried to get the ball rolling, but for some reason it died on the vine. I don't know what happened. My theory is that later on that year, they voted to give the entire 1980 Summer Olympics team a Congressional Gold Medal because they were forced to boycott the Olympics in Moscow. So I think it kind of got lost in the shuffle there. But I'm glad they're bringing it back. And the argument is, it's 45 years. You want as many of these guys around to savor the moment by doing this. So that's going through right now. And on Tuesday, 4 members of that team, Michael Ruzioni and 3 Minnesotans, Robert Clanahan, Buzz Schneider, and Phil Verchota. I apologize if I'm not pronouncing his name. It's V. I
think it's Verchota. I think it's Verchota. Yeah.
Phil Verchota are going to be present for Donald Trump's State of the Union address in D.C. So I called Buzz and I called Rob and talked to them about it and talked about what their life has been, in the years since the American Ice, and wrote a column about it. So it's pretty cool. They still get I have its passage in my column because I was talking to McClanahan and I said, hey, I'm about to call Buzz. Any good questions I should ask him? He goes, ask him who the oldest guy in the team was, because it's not me. And I called Buzz. He was like, yeah, it's me. And then he was talking about, we're old guys now, but when we're together, we still act like we're 19 years old.
That's the way it usually works. So you revert.
It was pretty neat to kind of talk to those guys and kind of get their views on things. They're truly honored to be up for a Congressional Gold Medal.
So that'll be the Sunday column.
Yes.
We had Ben Gessling on as usual, and we're coming up on, I think Tuesday's the deadline if you're going to franchise a player. So the ongoing question is whether the Vikings are obligated to at least franchise Sam Darnold in order to protect the investment, so to speak, and get something presumably significant back once you franchise and then trade the player. Now, the rub is you got to have a partner. You have to have, you kind of have to know what they're going to be willing to give you. So what's your view on this? Do you just let it go and not worry about it? Or do you think the Vikings are better off franchising, especially in the wake of the news that Stafford ain't going anywhere? Matthew Stafford's staying with the Rams, which means one would think there would be even greater demand from somebody to be willing to give up something for Sam Darnold, for the rights to Sam Darnold.
I've been torn on this because franchising Sam Darnold means $41 million. Okay. But Kwesi is a former commodities trader, right? He knows he understands the value of having assets.
He believes in optionality.
Yeah,
his favorite new catchphrase.
And he has options with Darnold if he could find a partner to trade that contract to and get something back. I don't know what they could get back though. It's not like you can get a cavalcade of picks back. You may get a second rounder. Well,
that's the question. That's what we're talking about. If you get a second rounder, that's pretty good.
That's what I think.
Yes.
So,
especially for this team that needs draft picks.
Here's the other question I've asked myself. If J.J. McCarthy didn't exist, how would we feel about Darnold coming back next year? Because that would have to be a bigger option.
Much bigger. Yes.
But it sounds like they want to move forward with J.J. I would gamble. That's $41 million is a lot to gamble with. If you can't find a taker and move Darnold at that price, that's going to be tough, and it's going to be egg in your face in a year where you've got a lot of work to do. One, you need to start stacking better drafts, and two, you got salary cap money, but you got a lot of holes to fill. You got to basically maybe have to re-sign you got to sign the entire secondary. What if Harry doesn't want to come back next year? You need a safety. Can you bring Byron Murphy back? Hopefully that's in the works.
I think they're trying for sure on him.
They should be. He's in for a decent payday after what's happened here. So, let's just say worst case scenario, you end up stuck with Darnold. We still have enough money to achieve what you want to achieve roster-wise. Yeah. So that's the one thing that will make it tough to just say, I'm going to franchise the guy. If it was $30 million, I feel differently, I think. But 41. That's
over 40.
That's so I'm leaning no, I guess. I've talked myself into saying, no, they're not going to franchise him. But I would slightly raise an eyebrow if Kwesi did.
I appreciate you coming in. It's good to see you. We'll look forward to reading your Sunday piece, and then you're heading to spring training, you said, on Wednesday for about a week?
Yes, for
about a week. So
when
we chat next week, you'll be down there. Next Friday, correct?
Yes, and it'll be 6:30 that time, and you'll get me
82 degready probably.
Yeah, it's going to be in the 80s on
is it? You checked?
We're
happy for you. We're really, really, really happy for you.
Yeah, and so, just before I head to dinner and just have a cigar at the end of the night.
Even
so
better.
It'll be perfect transition. I don't know if I'll be at the ballpark when I talk to you, but
That's
maybe.
okay. That's all right. Either way. Thanks for coming in. Good to see you, as always. Safe travels to Florida.
Likewise, my friend.
Lavelle E. Neal III. We'll come back and wrap things up. A couple thoughts on the bizarre theater that took place at the White House today. And we're going to have to do a mini ode to a dead guy as well. We'll try to squeeze that in when we come.
It's the Bumper to Bumper Show Wrap.
It's brought to you by American Pressure.
I don't say highly, flat out unprecedented scene at the White House today. President Zelensky of Ukraine ends up being 2-on-1 by the president and the vice president of the United States in what looked to me to be a very calculated attempt to make Zelensky look bad. The problem I have with people who are actually trying to defend the president and the VP regarding this unprecedented scene at the White House is they're going, it's about time somebody challenged this Zelensky guy. About time. He's not perfect. It's okay to challenge him. I actually would accept that premise if there would be even an ounce of willingness on the part of the president to challenge Mr. Putin. And so when Trump today says to Zelensky, lectures him with, you're gambling with World War III. Are you out of your mind? You can't state that sentence with a straight face without at least acknowledging the possibility that the country that was truly gambling with World War III is the aggressor in this particular case. So, am I surprised? No. At this point, nothing surprises me at all. I've said this before, I'll say it again. We are seeing more performance politics at its worst, and that's the way it played out today. There was no press conference as a result because it went so badly. But again, if you want to play the role of, hey, I'm the maverick in this, I'm Donald J. Trump, so my job is to challenge everybody, and in the end, maybe we end up with a deal that everybody can work with. I actually can live with that logic. But the problem, the fatal flaw with that is he's doing zero challenging. Publicly, and if he's doing it privately, no one knows about it. And he sure as hell is doing it publicly with Zelensky. So congratulations. He has taken our foreign policy, in this case, to a new low. Also, let me see if I can get to it quickly because our time is limited, but I want to get to it before the weekend is done.
And now it's time for Ode to a Dead Guy.
He was a guest on the Bumper to Bumper show many, many, many years ago, and he's a writer, former cop, named Joseph Wambaugh. And it's not exaggeration to say that with his writing, it really began in 1971, Wambaugh opened up a new era when it comes to writing about law enforcement issues and about cops. Because once upon a time, they all were clean-cut heroes. They all had no problems. They all were kind of above the fray. And what Wambaugh, a former cop, I think, ushered in was an era of, it's more complex than that. They're complicated human beings. Some of them do their jobs quite well and quite heroically. Some, not so much. Some abuse their power. Some have issues with alcohol. Some have issues with drugs. Some have issues with violence. And he handled all of that and discussed all that in a way that now we've come to take for granted. But at the time he came along, not so much, one could say. He was 88 years old. I don't remember the exact occasion about why we had him on, but I do remember that I enjoyed the conversation. He wrote The Glitter Dome. He wrote The Black Marble. He wrote The Onion Field. Several of these books got turned into motion pictures as well. He ended up writing 16 novels, 5 nonfiction books, created 2 TV series, one called Police Story and the other called The Blue Knight, wrote screenplays for the movie versions of The Onion Field and the aforementioned Black Marble, a number of other series that he was involved in as well. Got the Lifetime Achievement Award from Strand Mystery Magazine, noted to be kind of a shy, loner sort of a guy and rather prickly from time to time. But I didn't want to forget about him as someone, if you like really good fiction, and in this case you like fiction that opens the door to the possibility that these are flawed heroes, in some cases tortured heroes, he was the guy that made it all right, I think, to consider the possibility that not all police are quite made like Jack Webb from the Dragnet days. That's a very dated reference to what was once a radio show and then a TV show in which, the cops were deadpan and really almost robotic. And what he opened the door to was a hell of a lot more complicated than that. We take it for granted, as we say, now. He worked as an L.A. cop for, I want to say, the better part of a dozen years as well, 14 years with the Los Angeles Police Department. So he spoke and wrote with authenticity about this particular fact regarding police. He was certainly capable of celebrating them and was not trying to cut them down to size. I think he was just trying to humanize them in a way that very few people had been able to either were willing to do or even thought about doing, which I think he did very, very well. So Joe Wambaugh, dead at the age of 88 years old after having dealt with a bout with cancer, apparently. Tonight, we got Minnesota Wild hockey, correct?
Yes, sir. Colorado Central Division
we need
collision.
a rebound tonight. We could use a rebound tonight. The Wolves need a rebound. They're playing on the Timberwolves channel later this evening. They are in Salt Lake City, where the Wild just were, taking on the still not very good Danny Ainge run Utah Jazz, one of those teams that seem perennially in rebuild mode. And there'll be no Anthony Edwards tonight. As most of you know, richly earned because he got his technical number was at 16. And once you reach that fine threshold, you are suspended for a single game. And then the rest of the year, every 2 technical fouls means you're suspended for another game. So we'll see. I don't know. I wonder what the record is at this point for suspensions. I'm not exactly sure. But it's not a road, I think, that the Wolves want their best player to go down as at all. So that's all coming up tonight. So both our winter sports teams have a chance to redeem themselves quickly after not very impressive performances and the Edwards meltdown in Los Angeles as well to Luka, LeBron. I don't know if Kreger's was there. I haven't talked to him. My assumption was Kilby usually shows up for Wolves games when they play at home, but I don't know if he was there in this particular case. Fan and a Man in the Air at 6:30 first. Is that the plan?
Yep, that is the plan. I am going to tempt fate here, speaking of the ant bit, because we screwed up the math quite royally, and by we, I mean
yes,
me.
Right.
So here's what I've got. He's on pace this season to have 21.8 technical fouls. You get that with the 0.26 repeating a game times 82.
Gotcha.
21.8 technical fouls this season. That's what he's on pace for. So how many more suspensions would that be? You can figure it out for yourself.
That's it. That's the beauty of it, for sure. I think we got close enough, and if there's still people offended by the math, then too bad. At some point, it's okay. It's not the end of the world. We're going to be fine. We're going to come out of it. In fact, we'll come out of it Sunday sermons. Are you part of the equation Sunday?
Yes,
Or are you out of town? Okay.
Nope, I'm here.
So we'll have a chance to review a little bit more from the winter sports teams and get into a couple of other controversial topics as well. That's going to be the plan between 9 and 11 o'clock on Sunday. There'll be another Gopher, both men's game and women's game. Women, according to Guardsy, they are on the NCAA tournament bubble. They probably need a victory or two more to be sure, although he thinks they might be kind of like in the play-in section. Gopher men's basketball, they're just trying to get in the Big Ten tournament, period. And that means they're going to have to finish strong, and they have a game at Nebraska, as we said, on tomorrow. I think it might even be a matinee game. I'm not sure.
It is.
In any case, we'll be able to review that on Sunday as well. Thank you for listening. Thank you for writing today. Enjoy the rest of the weekend. Rather blustery, I guess, until we get another warming trend starting Sunday. And we will talk to you Sunday morning at 9.
Sorry, KFAN. But you know what?
I'll be there whenever you want me. I'll be there.
Are you hungry or are you starving?
I'll be there.
Hit the beach.